Hi everyone, I'm Aleksandra Litwinska. I lead strategy and enablement for HP's Personal Systems Office of the Future division. And today I'm joined by Todd Horvitz. Todd, can you introduce yourself to the audience?
Sure, thanks Alex. I'm Todd Horvitz. I lead customer insights for HP.
Great. So our today's topic, today we'll be discussing the topic that I think is very that everyone can relate to, and it's top of mind for I think most of you listening to us right now, which is global pandemic, the effect it has on us, on how we are working from home, how companies are adapting to that new situation, what best practices we are all taking, and also I'll be curious to hear also from Todd on what the future will look like. So what's the future of work after that global pandemic is over? So Todd, I wanted to start with the current situation. I know you're spending a lot of time analyzing how people are working and how they are changing their habits. I have this data from you that 60% of people right now are working from home, and we have, I think it was over 1.5 billion kids learning from home, joined by their parents. So how are people actually adapting to that situation? How people and companies are coping with it?
Yeah, thanks, Alex. Yeah, we've been following this over the last couple of months, last 3 to 4 months, actually. And it's interesting, when we first started conducting these pulse surveys, consumers were stunned. And I'm going to start with a consumer view, because I think, of course, we're all consumers, especially right now. Starting with the consumer view, consumers were just sort of that shock and awe, having never seen in most of our lifetimes an international public health crisis like the one that we're in. But then after a couple of weeks, we're human beings. And as we know from social psychology, we adapt even to the most extreme situations. And we find outlets. We saw customers going back into their creative passions, like live blogging and pottery and even painting rocks, as I see around my neighborhood, to make, they give their neighbors an excuse to come on over and just say hello, more than ever would have happened before. People find outlets for their tension and anxiety. We've actually seen a lot of gamers that were what we call lapse gamers. They gamed in college, and now they find themselves at home, and they're using up that bandwidth. Unfortunately, some of us are in houses with them, and that can be a bit of a challenge. But people have really adapted, and they've also adapted in terms of finding connections. We talked about it, and we felt the isolation and the restrictions and the rules and the and a lot of paranoia over the first half of this crisis, and then we see people also find ways around that, and they're using Zoom, and they're using a lot of different services, consumer services out there, many of which are available on our PC, to connect with maybe a smaller social circle than they had before, but to find that the intimacy with their loved ones, but just doing it using their PC. And in fact, we see PC usage increasing about 15 or 20% for most people, even more for Gen Z, for those under 25, over the last 3 to 4 months. So we're very happy about that. We're in the center of that, and we're happy the PC is a big part of the devices people lean on right now. On the work side, it's been a little bit, or work from home side, things are a little bit more mixed, a little bit more rocky. We forget, as sometimes I forget, having, that I work from home, or prior to this, work from home 1 or 2 days a week. And I'm very picky, and I have my setup here so that I can be just as productive. But most people aren't in that situation. I mean, most people were set up to do maybe 20 minutes of work at home, maybe take a phone call from their boss, but not conduct their entire job here. And that's created first a challenge for end users, who on many levels aren't prepared for this. Some of them didn't have, as I said, the right computer. There was a period of 3 to 4 weeks in March where about 30% of workers in the US were using their home personal computer for work. You can imagine what a security nightmare it is, to those listening in an IT audience for that. They obviously recognize that right away, but there wasn't much we could do about that. Secondly, the other challenge for end users has been around workspace, where they work. Again, I'm in a room where I can shut the door from my 5-year-old, but not everybody has that. In fact, 20% of us are working from our kitchen. Something like 25% of the main place they work in their house is their living room. We even have a few people that say they work in their patio and in their garage. Not all of us have a space we can work many hours a day at home. Altogether, this is a momentous challenge for IT. And we saw IT, and we'll talk more about this in a little bit, responding right away, not only by buying computers and mice and keyboards and things like that, but also augmenting software licenses for all these Zoom meetings that now people in their organizations that weren't even using these virtual tools are going to be using them. And in terms of getting involved in security augmentations and expanding their VPN capacity, and all of these other tools that are needed for for us to be more prepared. So end users like this idea of working at home, and not all the time, but sometimes, but not in this situation that they're in right now, when they're ready. And we'll talk a little bit more about that in a couple of minutes. I have a question for you, Alex. So you're shifting over to the IT point of view, you're in a lot of customer meetings with CIOs and other IT professionals. What challenges are you hearing from them during this pandemic?
Yeah, I think, Todd, it won't be probably a surprise to any one of us that that work from home aspect, I think, is the biggest one. So everyone mentions the problem with enabling their workforce to work from home. And it's not only about having the setup, it's a big piece of it, but it even starts from things like purchasing and ordering equipment. Not all the companies have the systematic process of shipping equipment to employees' houses, letting them choose what they want, up to which extent you allow people to choose versus you provide them selected solutions, and how you do that. So that's kind of the number one concern. Then identifying what do you actually need, because different users may have different needs. So that's a big question. And what you can have in your space will also differ. And I think that initial part of enabling people work from home is a big concern, but also what ITD leaders have been mentioning to us is it's not easy to provide support people while they are working from home, because not everyone's a tech expert. So people will have issues connecting their docking station to the PC and a display, and how I can actually, in my home environment that will differ from your home environment, how I can build my ideal workspace. That's a big question that everyone asks themselves, and they have lots of questions and long queues to IT to get those virtual queues to IT to get those answers. Then even when I have my setup, then if something stops working, if my PC is blue screening, what help do I get? If something breaks, should I ship it? What should I do? That's kind of those key concerns we've been hearing. Then moving a bit away from that setup and purely productive work environment, the point you touched on, security, is another huge concern. So everyone's talking about security in terms of IT concerns, because it's not top of mind of most of our CEOs and executives in terms of the key concern they are having for in the pandemic situation. They are thinking about keeping the businesses afloat, getting the revenues in, and coping with the situation where oftentimes you have threats of workforce reductions and tough decisions that they need to make. So security, hackers just do not sleep, right? They're thinking, well, maybe it's a time where we can attack and use this situation. So so there are also greater vulnerabilities when we work from home. You mentioned not being connected to company network opens some threats, some additional threats. So on the one hand side, you have the timing where people are focused on other things, not necessarily security. On the other hand, there are greater vulnerabilities in the system, and not everyone's connecting to the VPN, as we talked. So, so there's a list of things, right, that IT can definitely be doing, and that's promoting and educating people. You said 30% people were working using their personal PCs, and that's definitely opening us to some threats, because commercial PCs do have additional layer of security. Then connecting, educating people to connect to the VPN, corporate VPN, when they are accessing the data, not clicking on any suspicious links, right? All those aspects. And we have as HP security layers for phishing attacks, but phishing attacks are growing, and just that common sense and not clicking on anything that's COVID-19 or whatever links popping up, just educating your workforce. The same with using the camera shutters after working hours. So all those, just like I would say, basic security requirements are now the concerns. So I would say that what I'm hearing from IT leaders is that their role has become more important, and it's growing. And I'm sensing that IT's role is expanding. What would you say about that, Todd? Are you
Yeah,
also seeing this is happening?
absolutely, absolutely. We are. That's a great transition. Where this is the acceleration of several trends we've seen before, and we segment our customers in order to serve their needs better. We segment IT decision makers the same way, and there are a couple of different camps. There's one that is much more focused on productivity and security and getting the job done, but a bit more behind the scenes. They make miracles, but they make them quietly. And a second type of or types of IT leaders are much more about championing causes and the latest technology and being evangelists around their company for those technologies, as well as for the needs and of their end users. And that former group is much more used to being in the limelight as they are, but that group I talked about prior to that is not so used to being in the limelight. But this is going to excel. This entire crisis is really putting IT in a much wider position. 80% of IT decision makers agree in that, and one that is much more tied to the success of every part of the business. Early in the crisis, we saw IT do things much more than just buying computers and accessories and patching security holes. IT was involved in business continuity plans. They were setting up single sources of information for all of their employees in terms of health, having the latest health information. They were monitoring the condition of their employees, using technology apps so that management knows that employees are safe and okay to serve customers. These are a lot of, they were also patching supply chain gaps as well. These are a lot of areas that IT might have had a peripheral role in, but was not central and out and leading. And this is really a case where IT was really saving the business, helping the business survive and be able to continue to serve customers. To be able to continue to bring in revenue and support their employees. This is a role that many IT leaders were just not used to being a part of. But I think you're going to see this accelerate, this shift where IT is involved with many other parts of the business. Another example of that is what we call digital, or has been called, digital transformation, which is really just using technology to make the business run smoother, more efficient, better speed to market, more personalized products, things like that. That's been happening for many, many years. But I think this pandemic has lit a fire under a lot of CEOs that we need to get faster, because we're going to have to adjust very quickly to black swan events like this, to things that happen in the world. Yeah. And having technology allows us to be able to do that, whether it's shifting people from home or shifting, supply chain or one set of vendors to another set of vendors, having the ability to manage all of our inventory and pivot the way we do business, can be enabled by technology. And I think this sort of massive disruption that businesses have experienced, I think will accelerate the IT's role in digital transformation. We've been particularly impressed with retail, which is ironic to say because retail's been devastated by everything that's been happening. But at the same time, they have used technology and also just use very innovative ways of changing the way they do their business to be able to continue to provide the service they provide to their customers. A couple of examples, JD.com in China using autonomous vehicles to get products. They're similar to an Amazon in the US, to get products out to customers in Wuhan during the height of the pandemic in China in February. Also using stores as Target uses stores as distribution hubs in the US that immediately expanded the amount of inventory that could be delivered to people's homes. Curbside service and all the sort of adjustments that retail made incredibly quickly are great examples of where technology can help a business change on a dime and stay competitive no matter what's going on. The final area that I see the IT role changing is around employee engagement. Companies over the last decade have realized that curating the same type of experience they create for their customers will help employees be happier, retain them longer, make them more invested and have more ownership in their job. And employees, that's obviously the right thing to do for employees, for their growth. It's the right thing to do for the business because it's directly tied with innovation. IT can play a role in that as well. And I don't just mean measuring satisfaction, but also in delivering a great personalized, connected experience for employees, where they get the information they need, they can have those collaborative relationships they need, where all their needs that they have, whether they're in the office or whether they're working in a coffee shop, are met. And IT is playing a pivotal role in that. About 40% of IT tells us they're already working with HR and facilities and the C-suite and heads of departments to make this happen. We will see that increase and go wider, I think, during this situation. Why? Partly, one of the reasons why is I think you'll have employees at home. So now the experience, it's not just about the office experience and where the desks are and the meeting rooms and the open spaces for people to meet and have water cooler talk. Now the experience that we're curating extends to home. And I think, to enable work to fit in and blend in with the rest of our lives. And again, I think you will see IT step up and play a role in that.
Definitely.
Alex, question for you. How is HP helping IT evolve in its role?
Yeah, I think our statement here is we definitely want to help. We want to help IT manage the transition you've been talking about into that digital work life that we're all experiencing. So we want to become trusted advisors to help in that unique customized situation that our customers are having. We already have the world's most secure and manageable PC, so that's a huge benefit in terms of working in that volatile, vulnerable environment like home and office. One thing that we have changed in terms of our strategy, or I would say added on top, is we're treating now home as the new design center. So next to the office, it's becoming our new design center for product development, which basically means it's not that we're taking our solutions and products from office space and moving them out into people's houses, pretending they will work. We're planning to curate and build solutions specifically for home environments. And that's very important because we know that a key difference between home and office is that control, degree of control that IT can have. And we talked about this degree of control related to security. But it's also around space, right? I'm working in a different area than you, Todd, sitting in your home office, and it's more like a private home office versus someone else maybe working on a couch, right? And
Right.
sharing space. So that's another aspect we are layering on top. On one hand side, we're training our sales to deliver customized solutions and to think about what kind of user needs will different groups of people have, of employees have. Because the fact that we are moving to home doesn't mean that our jobs have changed, right? I'm doing the same job that I have been doing despite the fact that I'm 100% working from home. And in the past, I was working in the office. So we both with Todd are a sort of office home navigator type of persona. So collaborating, working on Microsoft applications. But our workflow is different than, let's say, professional creators, engineers who need ultimate power. And those people need different setup. They may need color accuracy, display resolutions. They may need some specific software accessories to have their job done, right? So on one hand side, we're layering this angle of what different users do and what they need, what kind of setup they need. And on the other angle, what space, what type of space they are working at and what solutions we can offer. If I'm in a home office that's private, I can have my speaker instead of having headsets all day long for a better experience. But if I'm in the couch, I would probably look for some portable display and some more agile and smaller docking solutions so that my footprint is maximized. So definitely we are working on those customized and very, very curated solutions. Another area that we're exploring, and it's becoming more important and we want to help companies with, is the well-being. So not only well-being in terms of our mental and physical well-being, and that's basically even technology can help you in terms of taking breaks and knowing when to take breaks and defining what you should do to feel better. But it's also about things like when we will be coming back to offices and some people may be using shared devices, how you make sure they are fully sanitizable. Our portfolio has been checked for that, and you can clean with household wipes, and that's super important because you can't, until vaccine is developed, you need to have a portfolio and products that will be safe to use in this environment. So we are definitely committed to help both with the pandemic situation and after the pandemic to help blend this work and life in home and office environments, prepare IT for that.
Got it.
So I think the last, we talked about the challenges, we talked about what companies are doing and how HP's helping. What's the new normal, Todd? What the
Yeah.
world will look like
Yeah. Been
after the
trying to
pandemic?
the new normal seems to change every couple of weeks, but we're doing our best to try to extrapolate out. There are some things I think we know fairly certainly. Um, First, the office remains very, very important for work. People feel energized and they tell us they feel more motivated when they come into an office. Sometimes, doesn't mean they're not motivated at home, but they want to have, most people want to have that connection to the office.
Yeah.
35% of people say they have friends in the office, and that's a factor in getting them to want to come in. And as you mentioned, we study different types of worker roles, and we know that different types of people, workers have different uses for the office. As you said, your creatives like to bounce ideas off of clients and off of colleagues in person. They like to show somebody how they're mocking something up, or some early ideas for something, and then they go off and they be inspired by talking to people and looking at content outside. But again, the office serves that role. For the general office workers, what we call knowledge workers, we call them office navigators. They're building relationships, networking, especially in a big matrix, company, is very key to them being able to be successful at their jobs. The more relationships they have, the more people willing to do things for them, the more they can get something done, and get information that they need. So coming into the office or meeting at quarterly offsites and those sorts of things are integral to build those relationships. It's hard to build a relationship unless you've met that person at least once sometime. So again, I think the office continues to remain important. I think the difference, though, is more about people working where they want to, not where they think they have to. I know from working in Asia before, that FaceTime is very important. And sometimes, we used to stay in the office until 7 or 8 at night because we had to, and our boss hadn't left yet. And that's sort of the antithesis of this new situation. And I think what people want is the antithesis of that. It's the antithesis of badging in and someone checking your badge to make sure you're going in 5 days a week. So I think you'll have, and 40% of workers tell us that what they want is a mix of office and home. I want to come in some days when I have a critical meeting, when I have somebody I want to see, when I want to just feel connected to the larger company and feel like I know what's going on, which we hear them tell us the office provides. And then I'm home when I want to do something strategic that I have to focus on, when I want to intersperse moments with my kid in between doing things, and I just want to get life done. All the little things that I think, we talk about habits and how they've been formed in the last 90 days, where it's in wearing sweatpants, or whether it's, the fact that I can get these things done during the day and not have to spend my weekend doing errands, and I still work plenty. In fact, a lot of us will, there's sort of the issue with blurred lines. If anything, we've seen in surveys, people are working more hours, but there's a lot of habits have been formed, and I think people are getting used to that. And we know that younger generations especially expect to and prefer to intersperse moments of work with moments of life and their passions and the things they do outside of work, and they mix those sometimes. And I think you're going to see more and more people feel like they have permission to ask for that. And as we've seen in this situation, CEOs are getting more on board because they're living it right next to the rest of us, and sort of seeing that the world isn't, the productivity at least isn't falling off a cliff. But we do expect some part of the workforce to work at home permanently, and we see that increasing. It was a very small percentage pre-COVID. It may increase over the next year or two to around 15% to even 20% of the total workforce. That's a good thing for the most part. Yes, it means we're shutting down some offices, but on a positive side, it also means that we're opening up the talent pool. You're getting a more diverse talent pool from, you're not pulling just from San Jose or New York or wherever the headquarters of our companies are, but you're pulling from everywhere. And we know that diversity is directly tied to innovation. So I see that as a positive. But you will have a group of people that are working at home permanently. We're looking at that and those people and their unique needs at HP right now. We know IT is doing the same thing. They've told us they're starting to look at the types of tools they want to provide them, how they can mimic the level of support. Many IT leaders tell us they want the same level of support that IT support that people get in the office, also at home. That means a lot of changes to the way we all, sort of accommodate our home workers. Again, we're studying that, and we expect IT to continue studying that. The last point I want to make is around collaboration tools. You might say, well, yeah, we're all using Zoom. Yeah, so okay, great. It's great that we have great remote collaboration tools, but we're going to go back into the office and those won't matter as much. I will say they actually will matter more, and they will matter in the office and outside the office. And there's a couple of reasons for that. One is that we've all gotten used to using them right now. And I think that people, for the first time, a lot of people that were traditionally remote part of the time have felt equalized during this time when everybody's on Zoom together. That sort of cements our love of these tools. And you'd be surprised in surveys how much people actually really enjoy being on these tools. Sometimes they even prefer it to a face-to-face meeting because they have access to their tools and their PC and things like that. So I think the equalizing that's going on, I think and I hope is something that's permanent, where everybody, regardless of where you are, can use these tools and feel like their voice is going to be heard. Where obviously there's some very innovative tools within these to allow people to whiteboard and share their ideas even when they're remote. But during this crisis, we've shared with our coworkers, not just with our friends, these moments of laughter. We've watched, cats and kids crawling all over people, and I think it's made work more human. And I think it's shown how technology can keep work human versus the opposite. And again, I think just this idea of using technology to help us collaborate and share ideas better, which is something that's been a pain point for many, many decades. And now we've got some pretty good technology, but I think it can get better. I think you'll see that increase. And again, just enabling people wherever they are to feel like they're heard and they're participating. I think you will. I think these collaboration tools become central to that for companies. That's a wrap for us. Alex, I want to thank you for spending the time with me today and for your thoughtful ideas and enlightening us on some of the things you're working on. This was really fun, and I'd love to do this again soon.
Thank you, Todd, and thanks everyone listening in for your time.
Thank you.